Hello, friends. Operational situation at the front on the 27th of April. Let's talk in more detail today on this broadcast about the Pokrovsky, of course, the direction of the clock in Yarsky, Kurakovsky. We will start with the fact that there were missile strikes at night, a massive missile strike, as well as a WAV strike on the energy infrastructure. And now, in general, they are summing up the results of this strike, what damage was done. Some of the missiles were shot down. And at the same time, information was received from the Russian side that there was a massive WAV attack on the territory of the Russian Federation, and there were also shots of a WAV strike on the Slavyansk Echo oil refinery in Slavyansk-on-Kuban. There were also reports from the Russian side that the attack was massive and more than 60 WAVs were destroyed there. But this is generally omitted at the moment. So far we are only talking about where there are arrivals. In general, it was a hit. And again, the Russian side is beginning to complain that the blow was massive, so it was possible to hit. Well, maybe so, as they say, in any case we fix it. Ukraine in terms of energy infrastructure, the Russian Federation in terms of oil refineries and warehouses. Now we turn to the review of the front. Kupiansky direction. Yesterday, it was active, and information was received by the end of the day. You may have read yesterday on a number of Telegram channels that Russian troops managed to enter the territory of one of the settlements during massive offensive actions. Specifically, this is Kislovka in the Kupiansky direction, and we continue active hostilities in this area. This means that the Russian troops managed to advance on a front section up to 185 kilometers wide, including the railway, to a depth of up to 600 meters beforehand. So the situation looks like this, but it's with a number of conventions, because, first of all, what was visually? It's a little bit, let's say, in the center of the red zone today is what we see. For the rest, it must be said that there are active hostilities. Naturally, now the pressure from the Russian side is increasing in order to get most of the Kislovka, and, accordingly, subsequently increase the pressure, but not on Kotlyrovka. And here we still need one moment to comment. So there is activity along the road, just between Kotlyrovka and Tebayevka, which goes in a northwesterly direction. And, in general, Russian forces have also become more active in this direction. There are several shots from the AFU fighters, including where they hit Russian equipment and armored vehicles in this area. So it just corresponds to the fact that they have plans not to storm Kotlyrovka, but to bypass Kotlyrovka by advancing in Kislovka itself. Well, that is, take it into the cauldron, as they say. But we will look at it in fact. Now we state that there are active assault actions on the part of the enemy. The enemy attacks with far from small forces, small assault groups, as we often state here, with the support of more than 10 armored vehicles. But again, it's not 5 or 7 forces, it's 50, 30, 20 people there, but they attacked with large forces. Therefore, active hostilities are continuing now for the central part of Kislovka. In principle, the enemy was preparing for this, and we have commented a lot that they are concentrating forces in the Valaisky district of the Belgorod region. These forces are being transferred. We also commented on this with you about a week ago. Yes, when I said that the transfer had already begun. In other words, they will definitely try to increase the pressure. Well, in general, now it's all started. We do not record any changes in the Lyman direction. The fighting is of a positional nature, as well as in the Seversky direction. And we turn to the Chasovyar direction, along Bogdanovka. We still have active hostilities in the area of the farm, and the near approaches to the Orlov tract, without significant changes. As for the deciduous forest, the oppositional fighting and the Stupki-Golubovsky Nature Reserve are also positional fighting. But as for Ivanovsky, there is a further advance of the enemy. It is already hitting from the south in a westerly direction, respectively. Here, to a depth of about 200 meters, advance along Voronezhskaya Street and in the direction of Zelenaya Street. At the same time, a number of farm buildings also came under the control of the enemy. Therefore, the situation looks like this. Taking into account, of course, the counterattacks from the Afu, where they were able to improve the tactical position of Yuzhno-Ivanovsky. But as we said, it's too early to talk about something large-scale so far, and in general, the enemy is starting to accelerate a little. And to a greater extent means betting on leveling difficult sections of the front. This is what we say for the Boyar direction specifically, due to the fact that it definitely means that the fighting will be heavy at the Seversky-Donetsk-Donbass Canal. And plus the Apu is already beginning to receive ammunition and so on. Everything that the West sends. In other words, everything is starting to go to the forefront. So far, we are not saying that we have received everything there, but little by little this process is beginning. Accordingly, the defense will be better. Naturally, now they need to close a number of points, and here they are betting on Ivanovskaya. They will definitely increase pressure in the near future in order to level positions and enter the Ivanovo forest. The same will be done for the Golyubovsky to Mortars Reserve in its northern part. This is the situation we have today in the Césaire direction. At the same time, I repeat, forces were concentrated in Bakhmut. These forces allow them to carry out quite serious assault operations on this sector of the front, but so far they have not decided on them. Although the window of time, it also narrows for them on this site. But in general, we will keep an eye on it. We turn to the Pokrovsky direction, where we continue to have major changes. Novokalinovo. Yesterday we said that Russian troops are trying to go north. Perhaps they will try to bypass Karamik without storming. Because now everything is going in the north direction. Yes, it was true, but in part. That is, there is a further advance of the enemy here to a depth of 650 meters in the north direction. But at the same time, he also approached the outskirts of Karamik, the village of Karamik, and actually works here from two directions. In the direction of ceramics, there is a depth of up to 780 meters of progress. The situation today looks like this and active hostilities continue. That is, on the one hand, as we expected, he will try, yes, to reach positions north of Novokalinov. Due to the fact that there is a complex topographic component in the form of beams, in the form of stakes. He can protect himself from a flank attack and try, we said at the time, to conduct it very quickly. It is also impossible to leave time for maneuver here, because there may be a counterattack. And most likely the Russian troops will try to bypass the ceramics, conditionally along this line. Perhaps it will be with Arkhangelsk, it's very difficult to say now, but you see that Russian troops are trying everywhere now. Where there is a gap, there is pressure. They are trying to find a gap everywhere to start the pressure. For an hour in the Yar direction, if it was possible to stabilize relatively, despite all the difficulties. Despite the number of artillery strikes by barrel, jet, as well as a huge number of tactical aviation strikes, aerial bombs, yes, then we have a different situation on Pokrovsky. The Apu is more difficult here, including because of the topographic component. We turn to Osheratina. Most of it is already under the control of the enemy, it has gained a foothold. We have said that the vector of attacks here is going in the eastern direction. We were talking about low-rise buildings then. Well, in the north, and also a lot of pressure in the east, in the west direction. Excuse me, in the north direction, and in the east direction, to the main building. Here it turned out that on a front section up to 2 and 7 kilometers wide, they advanced to a depth of 720 meters. Quite a serious promotion. Well, in general, there is military science, I think you have had since the 23rd year, since the battle for Bakhmut. Many moments were discovered for new viewers simply, as military science reports, if the enemy, that is, Russian troops, managed to capture up to 70% of the settlement in the short and medium term. In the short-term perspective of offensive actions, then there is a fall of the settlement. Unfortunately, that's what happened here. There are battles for the outskirts in the northern Osheratina, and accordingly the northeastern outskirts. Fighting continues where we have high-rise buildings. And here the enemy is most likely to go further to Arkhangelsk, although we said yesterday that they may try to outline the north of Karamik. But the fact is that there is a fortification here, it also needs to be stormed north of the summer cottage village of Zarya, as well as positions that need to be stormed. And here, under intense attack, they fall into the PV drones, that is, open fields. Most likely they will move along the building. That is, they can still go to the Arkhangelsk, and then the Arkhangelsk and ceramics scenario. Novokalinova, or rather, Novokalinova Arkhangelsk. But this is the most pessimistic scenario we are currently considering. Everything will depend, I repeat, on how quickly logistics will work and ammunition will arrive on the battlefield, including for the HIMARS Arsh. As fast as it will be possible to stop the Russian troops as effectively as possible, or to stabilize somewhere, or to align the front line as a whole and get time to equip neighboring positions. We will look further. As for Semenovka and Solovyev, the enemy, as we predicted, is now making attempts, so Semenovka in the north direction is, if we say, Zaberdaichi, and also in the northwest direction. Here we have a small beam and a forest belt leading to the road. In general, attempts are being made to improve the tactical situation in this area. But the biggest pressure from the Russian side comes from Solovyev and Novobakhmutovka in the south direction. That is, conditionally yes, attempts are being made to descend along the forest belt, yes, and accordingly then, what we drew from Semenovka to connect. That is, to close this ledge and the Berdaks themselves. Now there are active hostilities. But there is not only a vector here, what we have shown you is Solovyova Novobakhmutovka. Here, naturally, attempts are being made in the neighboring forest belt. And there is also some Solovyev's activity in the direction of Putin. Attempts are being made to align the front line. Now, taking into account them in general, and so recently, it is difficult to say where they will go next. Well, of course, the fact that we voiced Solovyev-Semenovka is something that is obvious, yes, because, as you remember, it seemed that they would storm the western part of Novokalinov. There was artillery preparation, there were already forces, they prepared, but they went to Novobakhmutovka. Therefore, the vector was abruptly changed from east to west. As it will be further, we will look. Because the enemy now has this numerical superiority of its own in personnel, and, accordingly, it is used against the background of the superiority of tactical aviation and the number of air bomb strikes. Moving on. On the Pervomeyskaya-Mebelskaya section, without significant changes. But active hostilities are still continuing south of Pervomeysky. It means that Russian troops are working here in small assault groups. Well, I repeat, we have not yet recorded any significant changes in this sector of the front. Moving on. Krasnogorovka. We are continuing active assault operations. Again, with the support of armored vehicles, attacks from the Russian side continue, including attempts to transfer additional tanks. Today, several more units were hit. So far, the number is being specified, at least 2. But in any case, the enemy is trying to increase pressure on Krasnogorovka itself in its main southern part. He managed to cling to it and gain a foothold. And he is betting on making his way to the refractory plant. Then, when they published a demonstration of the flag, it means in this building. We said at the time that they retreated to their original positions after the outcome of the fighting. They have not yet made any new attempts to break through. There is more pressure now on Zheleznodoroznaya Street, what we said, to get a wide coverage of the attack of the plant, and, accordingly, the strikes of tactical aviation with bombs are going along Krasnorovka. In general, the fights. There is a high rate of fighting, the fighting is very active, but so far without significant changes. Although, conditionally speaking, yes, we have already said that they are transferring forces to Donetsk. This is unequivocal. Well, the Pokrov direction and Krasnogorovka, because it is being transferred to the Petrovsky district. Perhaps this is to put pressure on Georgiivka, but most likely it will be just the same Krasnogorovka in the near future. Novomikhailovka without significant changes. According to the Harvest, there are also no significant changes in the positional nature of the fighting, mutual artillery shelling. And for work on the work ledge, also without significant changes. The attempts that were made a few days ago, and I commented at the time, there were also reports from the Russian side. That they managed to advance in the northern direction, that is, to occupy the southern part. No, they didn't manage to borrow it then. We commented on it with you at the time, and we managed to stop it. There will be a lot of attempts to be made, because there have been reports from the Russian side that, first of all, they have concentrated forces, and secondly, that they will continue the assault operations, in fact, not abandon their plans. Although there are also military operations. We often omit this point and continue to probe from the recruiting in the northwest direction. And in the north direction, as we said, that is, further probing is going on in the gray zone. Conditionally in the direction of the US Banovskaya beam, but without significant changes. Here, of course, they complain a lot about the lack of tactical aviation, just the same bombs. But on the other hand, if they, the Russian command, were afraid to increase the number of strikes, and, in general, yes, to increase the activity of tactical aviation on the Zaporozhye sector of the front, due to the fact that the air defense of the armed forces of Ukraine was effectively practicing here. Given the fact that additional missiles and additional air defense systems are being transmitted, most likely yes. They will not strengthen tactical aviation in the near future. So in any case, in the coming months, I would even say. Because then, when they lost 3 armored vehicles at a time, the number of air bomb attacks significantly decreased in the Kherson direction. Then in the markets and in the Kherson direction as a whole. Now we are stating what is there. Sometimes it increases the number of strokes, but it's not what it was before, it's not significantly the same. And there is a similar situation in this area, on the work ledge. I repeat very much depends on how quickly the help of the West will arrive, and, accordingly, including air defense. It is the deterrence of Russian tactical aviation that plays an important role here. Therefore, we will take a look. We do not record any significant changes in relation to the markets, except that activity has increased on both sides. On the Russian side, as we have already said, they have slightly intensified the strikes of tactical aviation. This is the first moment. Naturally, the barrel rocket artillery works, mainly barrel artillery, and WAVs, Dranovody. A similar situation on the part of the armed forces of Ukraine has significantly intensified recently, which is stated by the Russian side. This means that drone operators have become more active in this sector of the front. This is the first moment. The second point is that artillery strikes, namely barrel artillery, were also added by the IFU. Therefore, here we maintain absolute positionality without significant changes. This is the situation we have at the front. Until the evening broadcast. Be healthy.